In January and February 2026, Dawn and I went on an Explore group holiday in New Zealand. This video logs our adventures. Here is our route with places we stopped overnight. We travelled by minibus, foot, boat and aeroplane. Snapshots of some of our activities will be shown in the inset pictures, and more details of these will be given later in the video. Day 1 was spent in Auckland, where we met our group leader and members of our group. On day 2 we travelled on to Rotorua. Day 3 took us through the geothermal region to Waimangu, and we spent day 4 walking in the Tangariro National Park. On day 5 we drove to Wellington, and on day 6 we crossed to Picton on the South Island. Day 7 was spent in Charlotte Sound, and day 8 took us on to the Abel Tasman National Park on our way to Nelson. On day 9 we drove to Greymouth, and we continued south to Fox Glacier on day 10, and on to Wanaka for days 11 and 12. On day 13 we continued south to Queenstown. Day 14 we travelled on to Taihape, and on day 15 we took a trip from there to Milford Sound. Day 16 took us on to Twizel, and on day 17 we walked below Mount Cook and then took a second walk to the Clay Cliffs. On day 18 we travelled on to Christchurch and the end of our group holiday. Dawn and I spent a couple of extra days in Christchurch, visiting Arthur's Pass and walking on Mount Pleasant. We then flew on to Auckland and spent a day touring the west coast before our flight home. We spent our first morning in New Zealand on a tour of Auckland's volcanoes. There are 55 of them. Our guide explained their geology and relevance to Maori culture. Mount Eden is the biggest. Maori settlements were on these ridges. One Tree Hill has cultural significance. Rangitoto and other islands are volcanoes, as are these hills. In the evening we met our energetic tour guide Dawn. She taught us Maori words, drove us 3,500 kilometres, actively guided and informed us, and still had energy left to dance, sing and throw gumboots. We also met our group of fellow travellers. Here we all are, from left to right. Our guide Dawn, Mel, Ola, Gillian, Seamus, Dawn, Colin, Jeannie, Bridget, Penny, Lynn, Jim, Caroline, Jane and Rudy. On day 2 we travelled from Auckland to Rotorua. Just after 8 we met our minibus and its baggage trailer. We loaded our cases, climbed aboard and, after a few words from Dawn, set off south towards Rotorua, and we reached our hotel in Rotorua by lunchtime. In the afternoon we drove to Lake Tikitopu, or the Blue Lake, and walked around it. Looking south over the lake, we set off down the west side, into the woods and along the lake. New Zealand temperate forests are different. Ferns dominate the undergrowth, and the trees are native to New Zealand. Dawn points out some as we walk. A punga tree. That's a totowa tree. Rudy's left shoe already has some duct tape. We reach the southern shore and walk back up the east side, eventually reaching the road back to our start point. In the evening, we were treated to a hangi dinner and show at the Mitai Maori village. Chants fill the air as we enter. At the stream, a waka filled with Maori warriors appear. We then go for our hangi dinner, followed by performances of hakas. Some dances feature men, some the women, all sporting traditional face tattoos and displaying extreme posturing. On day 3, we travelled from Rotorua to Waimangu. We started with a Redwoods forest walk. Next, we walked in the Waimangu Volcanic Valley Reserve, and our final stop was the Huka Falls before driving along Lake Taupo to Waimangu in the Tangariro National Park. We set off at 8:30 and 10 minutes later we were at the Redwood Forest. This triangular grove of Californian trees was planted in the early 1900s. We just did a 30-minute circuit before driving on. Native ferns and fern trees provided ground cover below the towering redwood canopy. We returned to the bus and head to the Waimangu Volcanic Valley. We walk up the valley and take a bus back. This valley was formed by an eruption on the 10th of June 1886. As we head up the valley, we first come to the South Crater Lake. Steaming rocks ahead. It's above Frying Pan Lake. It's 60 degrees in the middle. But the edges are cool enough for this Pancake and its family. The stream from the lake is bubbling and boiling, but is joined by a calmer flow. Next we come to Inferno Crater Lake. Further downstream, more sulphurous surfaces, water spouts and steam. Yet Canada geese seem happy nearby. There's the lake ahead. It's time to get the bus back to the entrance and continue our journey. Next stop is Huka Falls. We cross the bridge and walk along the gorge to the waterfall and the viewpoints. There's a powerful surge of water under the bridge, feeding the torrent over the falls. A boat samples the outflow. We leave and drive past Lake Taupo on our way to our hotel. Day 4 was spent in the Tangariro National Park. First, we drove to Wakapapa village and did a circular walk to Taranaki Falls. At lunchtime, we visited the Wakapapa ski area, and in the afternoon walked part of the Tangariro crossing. Here are today's guides, Welshman Evan and German Krista. They drove us to Wakapapa village. We headed out along the upper Taranaki Falls track. It's mainly open heathland, but with some wooded sections. We cross several small streams before reaching the Porari stream that feeds the falls. An interesting toilet near it. We climbed down to the falls and onto the lower Taranaki Falls track. We stopped to enjoy the sight before continuing along this lower path. A few minutes later we come to this smaller fall. Soon the open countryside gives way to beach woodland. As we emerge from the woods, we get a view of Mount Ruapehu through the clouds. The end of the walk. Next, we drive to the barren-looking ski area for lunch before driving to the start of the Tangariro Trail. Evidence of large bushfires. Mount Ruapehu to our right. Ahead, we see fire has spread up the hillside. We reach the refuge hut. Here's the view ahead. Unfortunately, our guides decide to go no further. So, we walk back to the minibus and return to our hotel. On day 5, we continued south to Wellington. We stopped for coffee at the gumboot capital, Taihape, and for lunch at Paraparaumu Beach. The rest of the day was spent in Wellington. We're underway. After 25 minutes, we stop to look at the Mahatoti Viaduct. It was built in 1908 and is 79 metres tall. It's an agricultural region. They're proud of their carrots in Oahu. Soon we come to Taihape, the gumboot capital, where welly wanging competitions are held. We have a go, but are unable to match the world record of over 60 metres.
Whoa! Okay, that's good. I like your coffee cup.
Very good.
Before we leave, Dawn serenades us with an ode to the gumboot.
For your gumboots, where would you be? You'd be in the hospital or infirmary. You could have a dose of the flu or even pleurisy if you didn't have your feet in your gumboots. Na 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 na.
It's a long drive to Paraparaumu and lunch. The gulls are keen to join us. After lunch, we drive to our hotel in Wellington, then walk to the cable car. The funicular dates from 1902 and was originally steam-driven, but it's now electrical. The view from the top station, the cable car museum, the botanic garden. We walk through it, down to the Lady Norwood Rose Garden, and on to the waterfront for a drink and dinner. On day 6 we spent the morning in Wellington, then took the ferry to Picton. Our route crossed the Cook Strait, went through the channel of Kurateo and the Queen Charlotte Sound on our way to Picton. We began by exploring the waterfront. I like this waterside artwork. Dawn gave the diver a helping hand. The Maori explorer Kupe, who discovered Wellington Harbour. Next we head for the Museum of New Zealand, which contains Maori treasures and the National Art Collection. We begin on the 4th floor. It was devoted to Maori artefacts. A Maori meeting house and a storehouse, a Maori dwelling. The woodwork is covered in intricate carving, Maori boats or waka. This one's double-hulled. Maori tools, Maori clothing. We also visited the Gallipoli exhibition before heading to the ferry terminal. We're all aboard. The city skyline is to one side and the timber dock is the other. We're finally on our way, 2 hours late. The shoreline shrinks as we head out into Cook Strait, a lone surfer out at sea. We reach the southern island after about an hour and enter the channel of Kurateo and then Queen Charlotte Sound. There's Picton ahead. We slowly approach the quay, dock and drive to the hotel. Day 7. Today we take a boat up the Queen Charlotte Sound to Motorua Island, on to Captain Cook's Monument in Ships Bay, and then to Resolution Bay, where we walk the Queen Charlotte Track to Endeavour Inlet, and finally take a boat back to Picton. Both Rudy's shoes are now held together by duct tape, but he continues to wear them.
The other ones were for Australia,
People would think you were homeless.
We walk from our hotel to the cruise company, board our boat and head up the Sound. About an hour later we reach Motorua Island, a pest-free bird sanctuary. After disembarking we clean our boots and take the track to the summit. We hear bellbirds and see other birds. This cheeky robin blocked our path. A bathing saddleback. We continue to the observation tower, Long Island, then returned to our boat and crossed over to Captain Cook's Monument. This monument marks a major base for Captain Cook and his crew. Another monument acknowledges the indigenous Maori presence. Boundary marker poles. A weka makes a run for it, and the pied shag leads as we approach. After 20 minutes, we return to the boat and sail around the headland to Resolution Bay. We leave the jetty and start our walk on a section of the Queen Charlotte Track. As we leave the landing area, we see these remains of invasive conifers that have been killed. The track continues to take us uphill, and soon we get a good view down over Resolution Bay. The cicada, we hear them but rarely see them. We continue over the headland and reach the shores of Endeavour Bay. We regroup at this jetty before completing the final section of the walk and taking the boat back to Picton. Day 8. We drove from Picton to Nelson, dropped the trailer, then carried on to Kaiteriterri. From there, we took a boat to the Abel Tasman Reserve, walked a section of the Abel Tasman Track, then took a boat taxi back to Kaiteriterri and drove back to our motel in Nelson. Our first stop on the way to Nelson, looking over Queen Charlotte Sound and Onahoe Bay. 30 kilometres of winding road later, we reach Cullen Point and see Havelock in one direction and Pelonu Sound in the other. After a stop at Nelson, we head up the coast to Kaiteriterri. We wait for our water taxi. Soon we're boarding and setting off for Tonga Quarry. The outward journey is a sightseeing trip, stopping at Split Rock, Adele Island, Frenchman's Bay, Sandfly Bay, Bark Bay and Arch Point. The Abel Tasman Track follows the coast. We walk the section from Tonga Quarry to Bark Bay, then take another taxi back to Kaiteriterri. Here's the Toku and Gufa, Split Rock, Adele Island and its seals. We're entering Frenchman's Bay. This inner lagoon is only accessible at high tides, and there's one of the few houses in the park. Arch Point, Tonga Quarry, where we leave the taxi and head for the Abel Tasman Coast Track. The duct tape on Rudy's shoes seems to be working. The Abel Tasman Park was established in 1942 on land which had been deforested and mined over the past 7 centuries. Regeneration and restoration work have led to this largely traditional temperate forest environment. Eventually, Bark Bay becomes visible. We follow the path behind it, past this waterfall and over the bridge. The path leads to the beach, where we wait for the taxi. It speeds us back to Kaiteriterri Beach, ready for our journey back to Nelson and the end of the day. On day 9, we travelled from Nelson to Greymouth. We briefly stopped at Murchison before driving on to Cape Foulwind. From there, we headed south and stopped for a walk along the Porari River and a visit to the Pancake Rocks before completing our journey to Greymouth. It was raining as we left Nelson and continued to rain as we drove to Murchison. In 1929, Murchison was destroyed by earthquakes. The road from there to Cape Foulwind more or less followed the Buller River. Gulls on rocks off Cape Foulwind and seals on the cape. Visibility remained poor along the coast as we drive to Porari River, and the rain's quite light as we start our walk. We walk the first 3 kilometres of the track. It's a delightful walk along the river that threads through a magnificent limestone gorge. Sweeping up the sides of the gorge from the river are lush forests. There are tricky bits and different sorts of bridges. Most of us crossed the bridge with ease, but Gillian made it difficult for Jeannie. We turn back at the suspension bridge and retrace our outward journey back to our minibus. Our next stop was Dolomite Point. This is a rugged, rocky promontory with some interesting features. Geological processes have led to the sedimentary limestone and mudstone under high pressure, forming separate layers. These layers were eventually thrust to the surface, and the softer mudstone has been eroded to leave this limestone pancake rock. The erosion has also led to a number of arches and blowholes. When the tide is right, vertical water jets emerge from here, a carpet of native half-star plants. After finishing our walk around the point, we drove on to our next motel in Greymouth. Day 10. Today we travel from Greymouth to Fox Glacier village. Our first stop is the seaside town of Hokitika. From there we continue south to Okarita, where we stop for a walk before travelling on to Franz Josef. There we take a flight over the mountains before completing our journey to the Fox Glacier village. We leave Greymouth, and after about half an hour we reach Hokitika. It's known as the greenstone capital of New Zealand. It has a long sweeping beach with a foreshore filled with driftwood, some of which has been artistically modified. Another hour's travel and we get this magnificent view just before reaching Okarita. Opposite us is a monument celebrating Tasman's first sighting of New Zealand. The trig walk climbs 158 metres to the trig point.
It's a spider cocoon.
Spider
right?
info
So
from
it's
Bill.
hatched, so it's all shredded with holes.
We cross the wetlands. There are eels and small fish in the water, and enter the woodlands. As we climb, the views open up. On the ground are mushrooms and carnivorous sundew plants. The climb was worth it. Magnificent views of Okarita Lagoon to the north, 3 Mile Lagoon and 5 Mile Beach to the southeast, and the Southern Alps to the south. We return to the bus and head south to Franz Josef and our flights in those mountains. Here's our route. South is at the top. We drive to the airport, and after takeoff we gain height over the Walhora estuary, fly south over the Franz Josef Glacier, then southwest around Mount Cook, and northeast back to Murchison Glacier, and then west back to Franz Josef Glacier and land at Franz Josef Airport. All aboard with co-pilot Colin at the controls. We take off and gain height over the estuary. Lake Maporika is to port and the Alps are to starboard as we head for the Franz Josef Glacier. After circling over the glacier, we head southwest. Fox Glacier is to starboard, Mount Tasman is to port, and ahead is Mount Cook. Mount Tasman, Mount Cook, Lake Huka and Lake Pukaki ahead. As we swing round to northwest, the Tasman Glacier appears to port, and Tasman Lake and Lake Pukaki are to starboard. We pass over the Murchison Glacier and head west back towards the Franz Josef Glacier, then turn north towards the coast and head for the airport and the end of our flight. Day 11 began with an early morning walk around Lake Matheson, the Mirror Lake. After breakfast we set off for Wanaka and did 3 walks on the way to Munro Beach, along Ship Creek and to the Roaring Billy Waterfall. 5:30 a.m. and it's a short drive from the hotel to Lake Matheson. It's still dark as we begin our walk clockwise around the lake. Dawn approaches as we reach the jetty viewpoint platform. It's largely cloud cover, but the illuminated peaks of Mounts Tasman and Cook shine through. We continue to the view platforms at the north of the lake. We see reflections of trees and clouds, but not of the mountains. 3/4 of the way round and we reach Reflection Island. Again, nice views of clouds and trees. We complete the circuit and go for breakfast. We're heading for Wanaka. A brief stop at Bruce Bay, halfway to our Munro Beach walk. Fantails welcome us. We set off. At first glance, this temperate forest is like the ones we've already met. But looking closer, we see it's more mature and lush. As expected, tree ferns are prominent in the dense undergrowth. But mosses and vines grow everywhere, on living and dead trees. It's an ancient forest. Drooping leaves of the rimu tree. After 45 minutes, we reach Munro Beach and spend some time watching the waves before heading back to the forest and retracing our steps along the path back to our minibus. The view from Knight's Point, our next destination, Ship Creek. We decided to go up Ship Creek, but some just chose to go directly to the beach. I'm not sure what Dawn had in her coffee mug today, but it seems to be having an effect. It was a tranquil walk along the creek, and we finished on the beach. Our next stop was the Roaring Billy Falls walk. The path goes into the woods. This is one or two trees. Beyond the woods is the Haast River and the falls. On our return, Dawn's eye is caught by this massive Kahikatea conifer. We continue to drive along the Haast Valley and stop to view the Thunder Creek Falls. It's across the river and is 28 metres high. We completed our journey to Wanaka with brief stops on Lake Wanaka and on Lake Hawaii. Day 12. Today is a rest day, and most of us take a boat trip on Lake Wanaka to the Mou Wahu Island. There we walk to the Peak Lookout and back before taking the boat back to Wanaka. Later we go for a walk along the lake. We walk from our hotel to the waterfront and were soon aboard. It was overcast and windy. This gave us a bumpy ride to the Mou Wahu Island. We leave our boat at the jetty and begin to climb to the lookout. It's about 180 metres up. It's brightening up. As we go, our guides give us a nature commentary. This is not fire damage, but a fungus. We continue climbing and enjoying the scenery. Near the top, we come to a tarn, the Arrowtown pool. A good place for snaps. We're at the lookout. The views are magnificent. Time to head back down. Board our boat and return to Wanaka. Later, whilst walking around the lake, we come across two Wanaka landmarks. The Wanaka willow that sprouted from a fence post and the Hand That Nurtures sculpture. Day 13. We travel from Wanaka to Queenstown. First stops were the Bra Fence and Hotel in Cardrona. We had a look from the Crown Saddle viewpoint and then spent some time in Arrowtown exploring the Chinese settlement. On reaching Queenstown, we took a ride up the gondola, then travelled back to Shotover for a jetboat ride. We head south out of Wanaka and about 20 minutes later reach the Bra Fence at Cardrona. Thousands of bras have been left and have raised about $200,000 for the New Zealand Breast Cancer Foundation.
There you go.
Dawn decided to give Colin some support
Right, next to the bra fence, come on.
for our Bradrona group shot. On the other side of town is the Cardrona Hotel with its 1926 Chrysler outside. This 160-year-old hotel has large bars and a well-stocked garden. We continue up the Crown Range Road to the Saddle Point. We stop. before descending to Arrowtown. There was a gold rush in Arrowtown in the 1860s with a substantial Chinese contingent. These are the remains of their settlement. Modern Arrowtown. In Queenstown, we head straight for the gondola terminal, right to the top,
And they lead into those trees.
and enjoy the views from the top station. There's also a kart track up there. The four of us who are jet boating head down to the Shotover jet offices in Queenstown and are transported to the Shotover jetty. The jet boat ride is a 15-kilometre adrenaline-filled race through the Shotover River Gorge. As we wait for our turn, we see earlier trips racing up and down the river. Here we are on board. There's no photography while we're moving, but we capture this boat at a passing stop. It's a fun end to the day. Day 14, and we're ready to go.
Right, good morning everyone. Good morning. What we are going to do is we're going to chip off around to Tiano and have our walk on the Kepler Track.
We're underway, heading south along the east shore of Lake Hokitika. An hour later, we're heading east to Tiano to drop off the trailer before heading south to the start of the Kepler Track. The Kepler Track is a 63-kilometre circuit climbing to over 1,400 metres at the peak of Mount Laxmore. We just walk the easy section from the head via Spirit Lake to the Motorua hut and back. The head of the track leads to a suspension bridge over the Waimangu River and then uphill to the main loop. We head west through the beech woodland beside the river. The track crosses Forest Burn and on to Spirit Lake. We detour to the lookout. The lake. The Kepler Track crosses those mountains. Another 40 minutes through the woods and we reach the Motorua hut and settle beside it for lunch. After lunch we take a group photo and look out onto the shallow bay part of Lake Manapuri before walking to the Shallow Bay Hut beach for another view of the lake.
She said she hadn't been here before.
It's time to turn back through the woods to the bridge over the Waimangu River and to our minibus. Day 15, the Milford Sound trip. Marked along our route from Tiano are some of the stops for viewpoints and short walks at lakes and waterfalls on our way to Milford Sound. We had a magnificent boat trip on the Sound before returning to our hotel in Tiano. We're underway and our first stop is for a group photo in Fiordland. Next we see the Mirror Lake. Half an hour later we're on the Lake Gun Nature Walk. A pleasant stroll through the woods and along the shores of Lake Gun. We return to the bus and drive on to the Hollyford Valley Lookout. Next stop, the Christie Falls. Here's Monkey Creek, the Chasm Walk. We only get a glimpse of the chasm as the bridge to the viewing platform is closed. We've reached Milford Sound. Here's our boat. We're underway. The magnificent Mitre Peak is ahead. The boat heads up the left side of the Sound. The Bowen Falls is opposite. It rains for about 200 days and there's over 6 metres of rain each year here. So we're lucky to get a dry day, but unlucky not to see the runoff waterfalls in full flow. There's Stirling Falls, one of the permanent waterfalls. We'll go closer to it later. There are some temporary falls.
These are Pixie on the left and Fairy Falls on the right. falling from 90 and 80 meters respectively. These two waterfalls are both temporary falls, 7 meters tall.
We just sit and soak up the magnificent views. There's 2 climbers up there. As we approach the sea, the vertical cliffs give way to gentler slopes. The Sound is behind and the coast stretches northward. We turn round and head back into the Sound. Everyone is captivated by the awe-inspiring scenery. Another waterfall, cascading down the cliffs. There's the Stirling Falls again. It's awe-inspiring from close up. We're on the last leg of the trip and the harbour is now in sight. Bowen Falls again. And the end of the trip. After a 2-hour drive, we reach our hotel in Taihape. Day 16. Today we drive the 350 kilometres from Taihape to Twizel. We stop at Kingston to see the Heritage Railway on our way back to Queenstown. Then stopped for snacks and wine tasting at the Church Cafe, after which we drove on to Twizel with just a brief viewing stop at Lindis Pass. It was a dull start with mist hanging in the valley. About 2 hours in we reached Kingston at the foot of Lake Wakitipu and had a look at the Kingston Flyer vintage steam train. The lake from the Devil's Staircase viewpoint. 2 hours in we stopped at the Church Cafe for a snack. Some of the group chose the wine tasting menu.
Asparagus or even celery. Oh, it's beautiful. Look at the colour.
Outside were merino sheep. These sheep were accustomed to getting treats from the tourists. Our route continued west to the Roaring Meg lookout on the Porari River. Then northwest to the Lindis Pass and on to Twizel. Day 17. Today we do 2 walks. First, we drive to the Mount Cook village and walk the Kia Point track. Second, we drive to the Clay Cliffs car park and walk the Clay Cliffs track. We set off north under a bright blue sky. First stop, Peter's Lookout beside Lake Pukaki. Mount Cook. An hour later, we reach Mount Cook village and walk to the head of the Kia Point track. Mount Sefton to the left and Mount Cook at the right. The path winds up the valley to Kia Point on the Mulla Lake. Lovely views up and down the valley. Mount Sefton, Mount Cook ahead, the view over Mulla Lake to Mount Cook and Mount Sefton, which had repeated avalanches. We returned to Mount Cook village and drove back south to the Clay Cliffs car park. The Clay Cliffs are pinnacles and ridges, much like hoodoos in the United States. We head from the car park up the Clay Cliffs track and into the heart of the formation. The pinnacles form because erosion of softer material from the sides is faster than erosion of the top capping layers. Here we see erosion of a soft layer below a harder capping one. The path down is quite slippy, but we safely make it back to the track to the car park. On our way down, we see more odd shapes formed by side erosion. Time to head back to Twizel. Day 18, the final day of our group tour. We drive from Twizel to Lake Tikitopu. After our stop there, we continue to Christchurch and spend the rest of the day in Christchurch. We leave Twizel in the mist, but it soon lifts. Lake Tikitopu. We walk from our minibus to the lake and cross the bridge to the Church of the Good Shepherd. This church was built in the 1930s as a memorial to the pioneers. It's a small church which features a picture window behind the altar, giving worshippers this view of the lake. 4 hours later, we reach our hotel hotel in Christchurch. Our first task after checking in was to attend the wake for Rudy's shoes.
We gather to honor these brave shoes.
Next, we went sightseeing in Christchurch. The Margaret Mahi Playground, New Regent Street, Cathedral Junction, the old government building, the Taihape Stadium, Transitional Cathedral, CTV Garden of Remembrance for the 2011 earthquake victims, a mural on the back of Riverside Market, the World War I Bridge of Remembrance, the Scott statue, the Convention Centre, the earthquake-damaged cathedral, and the chalice sculpture next to it. Our day finished with our final dinner together. It was a convivial affair. Dawn gave her goodbye speech.
As my whānau for the last 3 weeks. You are a solid 10.14.
And I replied on behalf of all of us and handed her our thank you present. Before we finished our meals and had our last final farewells. Day 19, we took a guided tour to Arthur's Pass. Our first stop was at the jetboat centre on the Waimangu River. Next, we walked around the Kuratafiti limestone outcrop before driving on to Arthur's Pass. On our return journey, we visited the cave stream. It took less than an hour to reach the jetboat centre. This is where jetboats were developed. We looked in the museum instead of taking another jetboat ride. We drove on to Kuratafiti, or Castle Hill. This limestone outcrop was historically of importance to the Maori people. We walked the circuit through the rocks. Next stop, Lake Pearson. Then on to the Arthur's Pass National Park. By chance, Jane and Lynn were on the same tour as us. The weather was poor and the road was blocked by the annual 243-kilometre coast-to-coast race. We drove back to the Arthur Pass village and set off on the walk to the Devil's Punch Bowl Falls. It was a long and wet climb up, but was worth it for this close-up view of the falls. We returned to the village. Our driver headed back towards Christchurch. Our last stop was at the cave stream. Potholers emerged from this entrance to the cave stream after climbing through underground from this exit on the broken river. Day 20, the Christchurch Gondola and Tram Tour. First we took the number 8 bus to the gondola and then walked to Mount Pleasant and back from the top station. Later we travelled around the city on the trams. The bus takes us to the gondola base station. As we near the top station, the views open up. From the top we can see Lyttelton on the bay. Hang gliders are launching beside the top station. We walk down, pick up the Mount Pleasant Trail and follow it uphill. Lyttelton, the summit station, the city and the coast. We reach the summit and get this view. On our way back down, we were surprised to see Lynn and Jane again. We climb up to the top station on Mount Cavendish, return to Christchurch and go exploring on the trams.
Hemisphere.
Day 21. We fly from Christchurch to Auckland and visit the Sky Tower. The Sky Tower is 328 metres high. There's a 192-metre jump for adrenaline junkies. We take the lift with its glass bottom up to the observation deck. From there we get amazing 360-degree views of the city and the surrounding coast and countryside. Walking over the glass floor panels is a little disconcerting. We enjoyed our visit, having fun trying to spot the places we'd been on our volcano tour on day 1. Day 22. We take a guided tour to Piha Beach on our final day in New Zealand. Our first stop was Mount Eden. Next, we visited the Arataki Visitor Centre. Our third stop was the Karikari Falls and Beach. We then walked the Mercer Loop and finally spent some time on the Piha Beach before returning to Auckland. There's a symmetry about climbing Mount Eden and viewing Auckland on both the first and last day of our holiday. An hour later we reached the Arataki Visitor Centre. Outside is an 11-metre high pool, an intricate carving representing ancestors of the local Maori tribe. The centre lies in the Waitakere native forest. Our next stop was Karikari. Our guide, TJ, first led us to the falls, then onto the beach. TJ showed us the way to the viewpoint on the Mercer Loop walk, Piha Beach, which we shall visit later. We go south along the seaward side of the loop and continue until we reach the Taihape point, which gives us a view south to Mercer Bay and north to where we've come from. We head back to the fork and take the inland leg of the loop, uphill, halfway up, and back to our start point. Next stop, Piha Beach. Our guide, PJ, leads us to the left-hand end of the beach, past Tomato Rock, to see the crashing waves. We spend some time on the beach, enjoying the last day of our holiday. We meet TJ later at the other end of the beach for our journey back to Auckland. Tomorrow we begin the long journey home.